Warning: the following video contains explicit language, which may be offensive to some viewers or inappropriate for children. The content within this video is intended for mature audiences only.
Well, Judge Bozeberg is putting it to the Trump administration. He wants some details about that flight there that went over to El Salvador. He wants details. He wants to know information about it. Pam Bondi is trying to push back on that, saying he has no right to know what the hell the details are. And obviously she's wrong. And the judge is, saying, look, hey, I want to know, because, he needs to know if contempt was done. And if everything was so above board like Pam Bondi suggests, then why are they evading the judge here? Why are they ducking him? Okay, here's a video here about that.
Let's start, if we might, from the decision by Judge Bozeberg. Tomorrow is your deadline to answer questions. Those questions include the following: what time did the plane take off from U.S. soil? Where did it leave from? What time did it leave U.S. airspace? And what time did it land in a foreign country? You have, 4, 5, 6 questions the judge wants answers to regarding the details of those flights over the weekend. How will you respond at the Department of Justice?
Well, Will, our lawyers are working on this. We will answer appropriately, but what I will tell you is this judge has no right to ask those questions. You have one unelected federal judge trying to control foreign policies, trying to control the Alien Enemies Act, which they have no business presiding over. And there are 261 reasons why Americans are safer now. That's because those people are out of this country. The judge had no business, no power to do what he did.
You're watching The Legal Breakdown. Glenn, that was Pam Bondi on Fox News railing against Judge Bozeberg, who committed the cardinal sin of trying to prevent the Trump administration from deporting folks who hadn't had due process yet. She says that the judge had no business, no power to do what he did. He has no right to ask those questions. Can I have your reaction to that?
Yeah, Attorney General Bondi is wrong, and she knows she's wrong. Brian, every day I mourn the death of the Department of Justice, the death of the rule of law. I hope we can revive it, shock it back into life someday. We won't be able to do it under the leadership, air quotes, of somebody like Pam Bondi. And here's the thing. I actually want to start out, Brian, with a Supreme Court quote about why it is that people must comply with court orders. So here's what the Supreme Court said back in 1975. Persons who make determinations of the law and refuse to obey an order generally risk criminal contempt, even if the order is ultimately ruled incorrect. That is a bedrock principle of law. When a judge issues an order, you can contest it, but you must ultimately comply with it. And I'll tell you, these DOJ attorneys, I don't know where they found them. I don't know what rock they crawled out from underneath. But Brian, the kinds of things they are putting in written pleadings and the kinds of things they're saying in these now daily hearings before Judge Bozeberg, and we'll talk in a minute about why Judge Bozeberg is playing a game of chess and the DOJ lawyers are not really very good chess players. But let me just quote one more thing. This is something that DOJ lawyers actually put in writing. They said, the two branches of government, meaning the judiciary and the executive branch, are co-equal, and the court's continued intrusions into the prerogatives of the executive branch, especially on a non-legal and factually irrelevant matter, should end. Yeah, that's right. That's what they said to a federal judge. Brian, in 30 years in courtrooms, I've never heard anybody talk to a federal court judge or any judge that way. First of all, it is not for these DOJ attorneys to decide what is relevant to a judge's determination and what is not. And the last thing you tell a judge while that judge is conducting a hearing is, hey, judge, your inquiry must end. This is impertinent, this is disrespectful, and it is borderline contemptuous. But let me tell you what Judge Bozeberg is doing. Bozeberg is pressing these DOJ lawyers. These are Donald Trump's lawyers, make no doubt about it. I don't know who they are, but they're not, courtroom practitioners based on what I am seeing them write and hearing them say. And they're saying things like, well, Judge, we have this state secrets doctrine that says we don't necessarily have to tell a judge everything about a particular issue. Now, Brian, mind you, all we're talking about here, and you don't have to be, a constitutional scholar to understand this, is when did the planes take off? When did you learn of my order telling them to turn around? And what did you do? Did you turn around? No. You landed in El Salvador. These are not exactly closely guarded state secrets. So right. Bozeberg is walking them down the garden path. Oh, fine. You want to invoke the state secrets doctrine? I am ordering you to return tomorrow with actual evidence about why. These things I am requiring you to disclose to me so I can decide whether you're in contempt or not. Satisfy the state secrets doctrine. I mean, people might get frustrated because this seems to be bumping along day by day, but it is because, Judge Bozeberg is buttoning this thing up. So when he first begins to discuss the matter of contempt of court, he is going to have a very complete, detailed evidentiary record, and he will hold them in contempt if that is what the evidence dictates.
So he's basically letting them dig their own grave and doing it quietly and patiently. And at the end of this, when they have to substantiate all of the lies that they've gotten themselves into, presumably they're not going to be able to do it.
They're not going to be able to do it. And here's the thing, Brian. People probably don't know this because now Donald Trump has been yelling and screaming about how Judge Bozeberg is a radical, lunatic, left fringe type.
Right.
We've talked about this before. He was first appointed as a judge by George W. Bush.
Yes, he was that radical communist, George W. Bush?
Yeah, that radical left-wing nut job.
Right.
And thereafter, admittedly, he was appointed to the federal bench by Barack Obama. However, thereafter, Brian, he was elevated to be the chief judge of the FISA court, the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court, by Chief Justice John Roberts. And get this, people probably don't know this. He is also the chief judge over something called the United States Alien Terrorist Removal Court. That was a court created in 1966 to litigate issues regarding whether a particular alien, meaning a non-citizen, actually qualifies as a terrorist such that that person should be removed from the United States. So here's the thing. Judge Bozeberg is actually a subject matter expert on alien removal, not necessarily under this act that they're proceeding under. But generally, I'm telling you, Brian, I'm not going to say he's setting up the DOJ lawyers for a fall, but as you say, he's giving them enough rope and he's going to tie it into a nice little contempt knot, I suspect.
This is like when someone's like, "Oh, I don't really speak English. I speak Italian," and they're like, "Perfect, I am Italian. Let's talk in Italian." And they're like, "Shit, I don't speak any Italian." Glenn, you had mentioned that this is borderline contemptuous. Now, I understand that everybody has free speech rights. Everybody is able to go on to cable TV, cable news, and basically spout off about any judge they want to. Does it change things if the person spouting off about the judge is the attorney general?
So everybody has free speech rights, including government employees, government officers, cabinet secretaries, even the president of the United States. But you also are what's called an officer of the court, and your representations must be honest, truthful, factual. Pam Bondi saying the kind of things that you played in the lead-in, those are the kind of things that will damn near get her referred to her own bar counsel. I don't know if she's a member of the Florida State Bar. I would assume she is. She was attorney general down in Florida. But, you do have a duty of candor to the court. That is an ethical canon that we all must obey as practicing lawyers. And if you violate these ethical rules and canons, you could very well find yourself being investigated by your state bar, being sanctioned by your state bar. And if your unethical misstep was significant enough, you could find yourself disbarred, like guys like Rudy Giuliani, who is disbarred twice over, both in New York and in Washington.
So, Glenn, what are next steps now in terms of what we can expect with this Bozeberg trial as it continues on? And again, just a reminder for folks who are watching, this is all regarding Donald Trump sending off these accused gang members, these accused Venezuelan gang members, to El Salvador, despite the fact that none of them had due process here in the United States. And so when we talk about this isn't to blindly defend gang members. This is making sure that everybody in this country is afforded the right of due process, so that somebody who's not a gang member, for example, doesn't get swept up among people that they shouldn't be swept up with.
Yeah, dangerous criminals, whether they are non-residents, aliens, permanent residents, or citizens of the United States, ought to get due process. And if convicted or if found that they should be deported, then they can be convicted and imprisoned, or they can be deported. But the whole key is due process, not leaving it up to the whim of a corrupt, in this instance, president and his corrupt flunkies that he sends out to do his dirty bidding.
And I should add, and I'll let you get to the actual question that I asked in just a moment, but I should add that if we just blindly accept this pretense that everybody there was gang members and to just trust the Trump administration, that's basically setting up the precedent that so long as the Trump White House says that somebody is what they say they are, so long as the Trump White House says that this person is a gang member or a murderer or a rapist, whatever it may be, then and we allow it without questioning it, we allow it without due process, then that gives them the ability to sweep up other people that may be completely innocent under this pretext that, oh, we're just doing this because they're gang members. But look, Trump's priority is making sure to get people out of this country. And we've seen from these ICE raids that people who are American citizens and green card holders and permanent residents, all of the above, are getting swept up in these raids and being held in many instances for days without any due process. And so this is an administration that's already proven that it's not willing to act in good faith. And so allowing them this broad latitude to just be able to deport people without asking any questions will inevitably set us on this path where the Trump administration is saying one thing as a pretext to be able to just get as many people out of this country who actually have the right to be here as possible.
Yeah, the fear, the intimidation, and the deterrent effect it will have not only on people who may be in the United States without status, even if they've done nothing wrong beyond coming here, illegally, and people who might be contemplating trying to come to America, whether legally or illegally. Donald Trump is hoping they will be deterred. Stay out. We are not a welcoming country. And so to answer your question about next steps, before I get to that, let me just say Donald Trump has been spouting off recently about how this Judge Bozeberg character just wants to let murderers run around in the United States with impunity. Jeb Bozeberg was one of the most accomplished homicide prosecutors we ever had at the D.C. U.S. Attorney's Office, putting lots of killers away, but honoring their due process rights in the process. Come on, Donald, you need a better rap than that. So what are the
not
next...
only, Glenn, not only is this guy known for putting these dangerous people away, but it was Trump who actually released 1,600 charged and convicted insurrectionists, and yet he's the one beating his chest and cosplaying as some defender and some person who's going to keep the streets safe, when the only person who's actually released these criminals onto the streets is Trump himself.
It's the death of irony, Brian.
Right. Okay.
So next steps. As I said a few minutes ago, Judge Bozeberg is playing chess with these sort of second-rate DOJ lawyers, and he's going to have them come back tomorrow and, you want to invoke the state secrets doctrine to decline to provide me the information I need so I can determine whether you are in contempt of my order? That's fine. Come on back tomorrow and give me all of the evidence and information that will satisfy the state secrets doctrine. So we'll be back in court tomorrow. We'll be keeping up on this story, and Judge Bozeberg will keep moving the chess pieces, and at some point, figuratively speaking, you'll probably see the DOJ attorneys just upend the chessboard because they know they can't win on the merits.
Well, look, this is an especially important case. If for no other reason than this is the first case that we're seeing in broad daylight the Trump administration refused to comply with. And so we've been speaking about the prospect of a constitutional crisis, at least legally speaking, for quite a long time now. This is the first instance where we did have a judge hand down an order. The Trump administration outright refused to comply, and so that's what's being litigated right now. Obviously, major implications as this process continues to play itself out. With that said, we will, of course, stay on top of it. For those who are watching, if you want to follow along, please make sure to subscribe. The links to both of our channels are right here on the screen. That's also a great way to support us and independent media more broadly. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen.
And I'm Glenn Kirshner.
You're watching The Legal Breakdown.
See you all later on.